my skeptical mind, and that's just who I am. My skeptical mind goes to, well, yeah, of course, you've got this guy over here that's logical and reasonable, and you got this guy over here that's wearing a tinfoil hat. Of course the tinfoil hat guy's going to see a lot of stuff, right? He's like imagining it, or he's watched one too many sci-fi movies.
But it's used to help us frame hypotheses for UFO propulsion, power, stealth, weapons.
Everything that we experience is very positive.
Sometimes the field of ufology has a short memory span.
We didn't know anything about the $22 million back then. We just kind of thought, well, this is, and I think that was the reason why they were looking for military-type people, because in the military, you work with whatever you got, no matter what the situation is. You just kind of adapt and overcome.
What are you going to do with all this? You can't even take care of your own files and get them put into the current system, but yet you want to go collect other people's things. So what are you going to do with this?
Oh, I just love my little theme music. I have to tell you that when you listen to those clips, I have them specifically on there. They're all from UFO Classified shows that I've done over the years, and they've got Tom Winterton, Eric Davis, John Alexander, and I love the little, goat sound in the background. It kind of made me laugh for multiple reasons. Hopefully it makes you laugh too. And then also Phil Leach and Chris Bartell, who worked with my husband at Skinwalker Ranch for Bigelow. And so each of those I strategically put in there because they have meaning, and they should have meaning if you really listen to their words and you look at their actions, especially. I think it's very telling. I want to thank all of my listeners and especially my show supporters. I am here every week because I have your support, and if you want to pledge your support to the show as well to help keep me on the air, not only that, but to help me with obtaining research. My last trip to California to collect the Androffa files was quite expensive, as will be the archiving process, and so I really, truly appreciate all of your donations to keep everything going on. You mean the world to me. I want to give a shout out to my friend Mario, who is so great to help me every week. He is my right-hand man. And I also want to thank Scott Brown for the beautiful graphics and all that he does. He was on the show a couple weeks ago, or last week actually, and it's always so much fun for me to connect with all of you. I want to say hi to at UFO Researcher Bill, also Doug. I hope you're feeling better. I really love you guys, and we have created a very special community, and we are a community of people who are striving for the truth and who understand that we are not getting it, that we will not see disclosure at the hands of the United States government. I can bet my life on that one. And we understand that there are games that are being played, and that doesn't make it easy for us who have had experiences, who want to find true information out. The waters have been muddied, and that really doesn't help the situation, but we will get through it. I will keep researching. I will keep spending hours and hours a day looking through things and reaching out to other people who are not in the UFO community to help me on my endeavors here. So I want to just tell you all that. And I also want to say I have been doing some digging, shocking, about the abduction phenomena and some of the parallels between MK Ultra that was supposedly, disbanded back in the late or the early 70s, but we know that probably that might not be the case, but I will talk about that a little bit later. I'm here tonight with somebody who just makes me happy. And I think Earl is just one of the kindest people, and intelligent and funny, and not to mention the fact he's jammed with Exene Cervenka. I mean, come on, seriously. I'm a little jealous of that. Of course, I think she'd probably, outdo me on stage. But Earl is MUFON's chief investigator and assistant state director in Southern California. He is also a working musician, guitarist, songwriter. On our break, we're going to play one of his beautiful songs, half of the acoustic duo Piper Gray, and he lives happily with his wife, Lisa, and his cats, Gigi and Thor, in the San Fernando Valley. You know that I always talk about MUFON, and I'm pretty hard on MUFON, but I always support good people like Earl and other people that I have met in my MUFON time. There are wonderful people out there who are trying to get answers just like I am. So, Earl, thank you and welcome to the show.
Thank you, Erica. What a pleasure to be on your show, and wow, what a sweet build up. I appreciate all those kind words.
No, I'm
Feeling
really
is so
stoked.
mutual.
Well, thank you. I mean, I just not only, I mean, you're a musician. We get to talk about that for a little bit because I think it's so cool. But I mean, you're out there. You're you and I have had some private conversations, and you are asking the right questions, and you're understanding that there is more going on that needs to be looked into, and you also understand that the UFO community is a place where, unfortunately, a lot of cult-like behavior can take place, and that's something that we really have to watch. And so, welcome to the show. And I want to just ask you, okay, tell me about jamming with Exene.
Well, now this was a long time ago. We used to play the same venue that was out in North Hollywood. It was a place called the Iguana Cafe, and Exene used to hang out there, as did John Doe and all the members of X. They were regulars. They would So long story short, it was about 1990. So I'm definitely aging myself, but who cares?
I do. I can't go there yet.
Early 60s here, but they had a very famous open mic where it wasn't sort of like your usual open mic. You had to have a little bit of cred, and so anyway, I first time that I ever played in front of this big and beautiful group of people, the owner of the club comes up to me and he elbows me. It's like, Earl, I'm going to displace you. Just I'm going to have one act before you, and then you can come up. And it's like, well, yeah, okay, sure, that's all right, and and so he brings up Exene Cervenka, and it was so cool, I mean, it was, and I had no idea who it was going to be. I really had no idea, and but that was the kind of place it was, and her boyfriend at the time was the actor
Viggo Mortensen.
Is Viggo?
Oh yeah.
And Viggo, what a sweetheart of a guy. And he used to come out to my shows when I'd play places back then, and the LA acoustic community was sort of this very close-knit small group, because mostly you had sort of like the hair bands and stuff like that going on. Kind of the post-punk movement was happening where, X fit in and Exene and all those guys. But there's something special happens when you put down your electric guitar and you get rid of your effects pedals and stuff, and you just kind of go for it naked, more or less, acoustically with an acoustic guitar. That's what we all did there, and so it kind of was the great equalizer. So I would get to play with people like Exene and Viggo would do poetry readings back then. He wasn't that well known as an actor yet.
Why can I believe that? I can just see Viggo doing poetry readings. It's coming together.
He wrote beautiful poetry. That's what I knew him as. I would go to his gigs and he would come out to mine. Just such a wonderful time, and like all things that are special and meaningful in our lives, it definitely had this little arc to it. It lasted for maybe 8 years, and then, things changed, and it's no longer a venue. But there's many of us who sort of met each other, who are very, very close friends. The little indie label that I'm on, Trough Records, kind of came from that group of people. And so it carries on, all these years later. I haven't been in the Lord of the Rings or anything like that.
I love that. I love those movies. Oh,
me too. Viggo did very, very well for himself, and it's always good to see that. And so anyway, that's kind of how I met Exene, and I don't know that I ever actually truly jammed with her. We were just sort of on the same stage.
Oh, that'll work. That'll do. That's pretty cool.
And she had a band called Antichrist, like spelled like your aunt. Your aunt. Yeah, she was so Christ-like.
Of course.
that we called her Antichrist, you know.
Oh my God.
I know. It's just great, you know, so much originality out there. And I mean, you know, people that I knew were hanging out with Timothy Leary and just, you know.
Oh, Lordy.
Ginsburg did a reading over at the old Iguana Cafe, you know, just such an amazing, sort of a polyglot of various and sundry artists who, you know, the only thing that we all had in common was that you had to be original. You had to do original material because the owner of the club wasn't willing to pay BMI or ASCAP or any of the publishing companies. You'd have to play your own song that you wrote, you know, or you'd have to disguise your cover so well that nobody would know what it was. Some people did that, yeah.
How fun. I mean, I have to say my claim to fame, which really isn't one at all, is I warmed up for Kevin Bacon and the Bacon Brothers.
Bacon Brothers rock, man. I love the Bacon Brothers.
Well, you know, I will say he was kind of...
You do have fame, Erica. I know who you are.
Oh, boy, I'm so scary. I will pay for your therapist.
You're on TV and stuff.
Oh, boy. Oh, yeah.
I've been too, but I've just been on one. I had one Travel Channel show that I've been on. So, but I'm always interviewing. I just did like a 2-hour interview for some other station. I'm not going to say any more than that, but we'll see what happens. But yeah,
I think it's, you know, I love, since I'm a performer and, you know, I grew up on stage and I grew up doing voiceovers and different things. I mean, I really feel comfortable doing that. It's fun for me, even though it's hard. It is hard to sit in one position with your torso turned one way for, you know, 10 hours while you're filming. And it really is hard, but I'm hoping, for me at least, when I do the TV shows, that I can increase my visibility. And then, you know, my hope is to get good information out to the public, because there is not a lot of good information in especially when you turn to the field of ufology. You know, it just is a big, it's just full of a lot of strange ideas.
Yeah. I mean, the networks don't really want you to debunk stuff. And sometimes they'll come up with, you know, sort of like their list of things that they want you to talk about. And the one show that I did fairly recently, they had one UFO where I knew exactly what it was. It was the Golden Knights parachute team, the Army parachute team, and they'll wear like flares on their feet, and so this was happening out in North Carolina, and they're filming me while they're showing me this thing, and I'm telling them, you know, I've seen this before, and I can tell you exactly what this is. This is an IFO, a real impressive IFO. And they didn't keep that. They got rid of that.
I bet. I know it is interesting to see. I mean, I remember on one of the shows that I was, you know, filming, I just said, I was just like, you expect me to read this? that is not going to happen. And I mean, I could just see everybody on, you know, on the production crew just going, oh my gosh, this woman is high maintenance. Get her off the set.
Good for you.
But it's just like, yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, and definitely over the years, my opinion has completely changed over a lot of things. And so some of the things I might have said then, I wouldn't say now. And, you know, I mean, it's a learning process, but I don't know. It's a fun learning process. And sometimes it can, I don't know, make me want to lock myself in the closet, because it's just, there's a lot of stuff, a lot of chaos, a lot of controversy and different things. But it's something that I am very passionate about, as are you. And I want to know, because your childhood, I mean, you grew up with a mother who was in the aerospace industry and worked for Hughes Aircraft, and you have lots of interesting stories about that. And so tell us a little bit about your background and how you first decided that you wanted to get into this and really pursue finding answers.
Sure. Well, when I was a kid, like many of us out here in the Los Angeles area, there's a big boom in the aerospace industry, and my mom was part of that. She worked for Howard Hughes and Hughes Aircraft over at the old the Sepulveda building that they had out near Hollywood, and she was one of two secretaries working privately for Howard Hughes. The stories that you've heard about Mr. Hughes are true, that he was a germaphobe, that he was a reclusive gentleman. The few years my mom worked for him, she only saw him in person once, even though her office was right next to his. He would communicate via intercom. That's how he would talk to my mom and his other secretary.
Wow, that's special.
Yeah. And what they would do is when it was time to go home, they would sort of alert everybody over the intercom, and they would let Hughes go down the hallway first. You know, they all their offices opened up to sort of a central hallway that led out to the parking garage. So they would have to wait for a couple of minutes and give them a chance to get out of there, and then they'd give them all clear, and then everybody else could leave. There was one evening where apparently Hughes was a little slow, a little slow on the egress. So my mom's, they get the all clear. My mom opened the door, and she said that he was almost like Charlie Chaplin. It was at the very end of the hallway. That you could kind of just see his silhouette. He had the door open, but he had a briefcase in one hand. He had a hat on, and he heard the door open, and she said that he stopped, and you could tell that he stopped because he was really uncomfortable about the situation. Anyway, my mom said that he kind of waddled out the door and closed the door, and that was the only time that she ever saw him. She didn't even see his face. She saw his profile, sort of, in the doorway there. But my mom had interesting stories, and I think that she told them to me because she thought that I was a safe person to tell them to.
Well, she learned her lesson.
Yeah, I know she did. The earliest memories I have of this, we were still living in Venice, California, and we only lived there until I was 5 years old. So I was probably about 3.5, 4 years old. And my mom talked about working for Howard Hughes. She talked about working in an underground laboratory. She said that, they flew her out to the middle of nowhere, is the way she described it. She never even told me what state it was in, but she said it was in the desert, and that she had a little security detail of people with her, and she said there was something that looked like a pump house. They would walk out to the pump house with her, open the door, and there's this elevator. And she said that the pump house, when you went in there, it was kind of dusty, and it wasn't like this, beautiful, thing. It was just like it played its part really well. But anyhow, she got into this elevator. It only went one, it just went down, right? Usually you have an Otis elevator, it goes up as well. There was no up to it. So they got in this thing, and my mom, she wasn't given any warning at all about what to expect. She thought that she would go down maybe a floor or two, and Mom said that she felt butterflies in her stomach, that the elevator kept going and kept going. And she said that when it stopped, the doors opened, and there was a little city down there. She said that there were lots of people, that they got around in golf carts. She said that there were people that stayed there long periods of time, that they had a bowling alley, they had movie theaters, drugstores. She said that they had a barber who could do her hair for her. So this sort of barber / hairstylist, she could actually, get her hair done. Technically, like she said it was a mile under the desert, and I don't know if she meant literally like they measured it, or she was giving me an idea that it was way, way deep. But this is, she told me this story. Now she would talk about that, and when she wasn't talking about the little city under the desert, the other thing Mom would talk about was intelligent life in the universe, and she spoke about it with authority. And it was the strangest thing being a kid and hearing this from your own mom. But she said that we're not alone in the universe, that the government is well aware of that, and that they'll never tell. They'll never, ever, ever tell us this. And
that's never important.
The two stories. Yeah.
That's important.
Yeah. She never connected the two stories, but as I got older and I heard things, I kind of connected them myself. But that's what I grew up with, and eventually it led me to, my mom eventually went back. She was a housewife for many years, and she went back into working for aerospace. She wound up as a headhunter for various aerospace companies like Lockheed and Northrop and you name it, Raytheon, all those guys, as the military industrial complex, more or less. Mm-hmm. And she became very quiet about it. At that point, she wouldn't talk about it. She would like shush me. She would say, "I can't tell you this stuff, Earl. I shouldn't have told you anything. I didn't think you would remember it. Your mother could get into lots of trouble."
Yes, indeed. Yeah, and that's it must have been just fascinating, and that must have really gotten, a hold of your imagination to think about all of these things and possibilities. And then you have, of course, the lore that was inserted very craftily into the narrative by the intelligence community, I'm sure, about the, some of the aliens underground and some of these things. But it's also fascinating. And so where did you ever have a sighting when you were growing up?
I never had a sighting while I was growing up. Strangely enough, I had a couple of sightings once I, became, a ufologist. As my friend Peter Robbins likes to say, there's no degrees in this. You can't get one through the university. Click your heels together 3 times and you're a ufologist. But after I became interested in this and people kind of knew that I was interested in it, I had a couple of anomalous sightings. Never saw what I would call a flying saucer or anything that I would expect or would have liked to have seen. Mm-hmm. If I were going to choose my own UFO sighting, I'd want to see what Travis Walton saw.
Well, maybe not. No, yeah, I don't. No. Pick a different one. That one doesn't sound like a lot of fun. I don't know.
Yeah, but you know what I'm saying. The proverbial, futuristic-looking spaceship. I can go with that. I want to see that, but that's not the kind of thing that I've seen. And I've only had 2 sightings. I had like a weird experience when I first became a field investigator, and I'm not sure if that was. We talked about this a little bit. For a long time, I thought that it was aliens. I went to Kathleen Martin and asked her about it, and I thought she thought perhaps it was renegade grays, because it wasn't a pleasant experience that I had. It was very scary, and I always have been of the opinion, I guess, not that I know anything about them, but you kind of figure if there's a group of intelligent beings that are traveling from star to star, you would think that they would have to be a peace-loving group of creatures, or else they would have destroyed themselves in the process.
Right.
But so it was very not a comfortable experience for me, and it kind of went against everything that I hoped for or believed in about the phenomenon. And I'm we were just talking about this. Definitely and certainly it seems like the government uses the UFO as a cover for their own stuff. And so maybe that was a shot over the bow or something, or maybe they wanted to scare me or shut me up. Maybe somebody thought that I knew more than I actually did, because I really, my mom didn't talk that much. What I just told you is pretty much all she told me. She said that, it's a very real phenomenon. It's realer than you will ever know. But that's kind of where she left it. And that's why I became more than just an armchair ufologist. I wanted to be hands-on and see if I could figure this out, and plus it's just kind of my mom passed away 21 years ago. So it's me kind of trying to find out my mom's history too. Right. I want to know what she was doing in the underground lab.
Right. Isn't that interesting? Yeah, because my father worked at Dugway, and you wonder sometimes what's going on, and the more that I look into things, and I look into MK Ultra, and I look into some of the technologies or some of the experiments they were doing back then with hypnosis and all of these things to try to create the perfect super soldier or an obedient population and different things. I mean, it just, you never know what somebody is capable of, and the UFO narrative is such a great cover story, and we've seen how great the cover story is because just look at Skinwalker Ranch and some of the, what they did to the military vets there, and then also, what they're doing to the community now, and it's really interesting, and I don't know, I wish that I could wake up and think about rainbows and unicorns, but now it's sometimes I do, but no, it's just, I don't know. It's just, it's fascinating to learn more and then to step back and see. And I think we really have to do that as we, instead of falling into the trap where everything is an alien or an extraterrestrial or, it's this or that. I mean, I look back at some of the cases that I investigated, and I never went out and said, this is an extraterrestrial. I didn't have that in my heart, but there are investigators that do. And that's so, I mean, how do you feel about that?
Unknown means exactly what it says. And unknown means I don't know what it is. That's what it means. I mean, I feel like, I think that it's, that there are various things that are going on. I don't think that it's just one thing that's happening. I think that there's probably an extraterrestrial presence, or perhaps it's interdimensional. I think that is a real thing. That's been going on for a long, long time.
Right.
Going back to antiquity. I mean, as silly as ancient aliens can be sometimes, I think that there's a core of truth in that. But I think that there's probably a government thing too, as we were talking about. Robert Guffey's book Cameleo is definitely something that you want to read. Or our mutual friend Greg Bishop wrote his Project Beta about the whole Paul Benowitz fiasco, and that was a situation that we know happened where they used the UFO phenomenon to cover up something that the Air Force was doing. These drones, more or less, is what they were working with, and they were willing to drive this PhD insane. To get rid of them, and to put out disinformation on the subject.
And that is so heartbreaking. I mean, they went to, it wasn't even just, a slap on the hand. It was like a very strategic, kind of a long-term experiment to see how this person would respond, and tampering with the computers and all sorts of things. And it's funny because in the Ann Druffel files, she has a file on Paul Benowitz, and there is a letter from that he wrote in October 2nd, 1985, and in it he is describing the harassment and different things that were taking place to him, and it is really heartbreaking that that's the kind of lengths that some people will go to keep things quiet or to try to create confusion, or it's just, it shouldn't be the way we operate in America.
Collateral damage, is the way they look at it, apparently. And it was this man's life, and an intelligent man, a successful scientist, had his own, company that made scientific equipment and stuff, and they intentionally drove him insane. I think that's their intention was that, and they wanted to see what it would take to do that, and well, apparently now they know. And it's definitely a cautionary tale, and anybody that goes into, ufology, when I have a new field investigator, when I speak with them the first time, I will give them that little caveat that you have to be very, very careful, because the UFO phenomena just in itself is so strange, and that can, throw people, with the ontological shock involved, it can kind of pull the tablecloth out from under your dishes, But
I like that saying.
But with, all that's going on, then you've got, intentional interference by the government, because you're correct. I don't believe that disclosure is ever going to happen, not officially, that not unless it can help them in some way, because they would have to reveal everything to our enemies as well, our frenemies, Russia, China, or whoever. There's just that mutual information sharing thing that we're supposedly doing. So they're going to use the UFO phenomena to obfuscate what is black projects.
Right.
Yes, yeah.
And thank you for saying that. I think, for me, this is so important. And the more I learn, the more I have to stress this to people, because this isn't, when I got into this, I thought it was, fun. I thought it was exciting, and that we were all doing, just exploring things. And I quickly learned that, wow, there is a lot going on under the sheets, and it is not in our best interest. I don't think it is. And what a better way to experiment on people, or to, do A, B, C, and D, than to use this UFO cover story. And it's just like, whoa. And I really think, especially now that we look at To the Stars, and we look at the alleged UFO videos coming out from that group, and it's probably our technology, I would imagine. But there's so many red flags, and it's like, I just encourage people to really take their blinders off, and to be smart, and to understand that there are, this is serious.
Yes, it is. It's not, there's a lot more going on than it, I was the same way too. I think that we go into this just sort of naive and with good intentions, but you have to be circumspect and very, very careful, because it can be used against you intentionally. It's sad that we have to worry about that, but we do. We do, and I think, for me, now that I look back on, and I start analyzing some of the players involved, and, I bring this up quite frequently because I want to drive it into people's head again, that, you look at people like Hal Puthoff and Eric Davis, and some of the people that are involved with the Bigelow boys. And these are people that have backgrounds, and they, with non-lethal weapons. John Alexander. How much more clear does it need to be for people that these guys are not on the up and up, and they're in all likelihood going to be giving a cover story and not really telling people the truth? And the way I feel about all those people, really, is, I don't think that they're all malevolent. I don't think that they all have, that they have a malevolent ideal there. But, and I'm not going to name people either, because, I don't think that it's that simple. I don't think that they're going to go in there and they're going to say, now you're going to be this agent of obfuscation, and you're going to lie and do all this. I don't believe that. I think that, people are going in wanting to serve their country. They have patriotic values, but they're more or less being used too. And I don't know who the I don't think that, the whole idea of the deep state thing just rankles me. I don't think that there's just one big edifice-like monstrosity that's pulling all the levers behind it. I think that there's different stuff that's going on, but it's easy to get caught up into, and you just have to be careful. You have to be careful and smart, and keep an open mind, but think rationally through it too.
Absolutely, and definitely, I think, when the government, or certain players who have been involved with the CIA are coming out and saying different things, I think you need to question. Definitely question what they're saying, because it's I would have a hard time thinking that there isn't a lot of money behind the scenes involved, and different contracts here and there, and all sorts of things, and so they have a need to create, or to keep a myth going, or the UFO thing going, like you say, to kind of obfuscate things that are taking place. And it just is really, really, it's interesting. And I also, with me now, I think about, because I had some UFO sightings, and I remember going in and reporting them, on a couple different sites. And now that I look back on that, I think, oh, I really wish that I would not have done that, because data is big money for people. And we saw, with Robert Bigelow purchasing multiple databases including MUFONs over the years. It's like, oh my gosh, is this? I mean, how do you feel about that? And is the MUFON database, specifically the abduction database, is that something that is really locked down now?
Yes, is very locked down. And I think that, there was that whole mess with Bigelow, and I know that people that I've spoken with that were involved in that were very, that they wished that it never happened. And I don't think I think that people learned their lesson as far as that goes in MUFON. If they haven't, then God, I don't know what to say. But I know that everything's very, very locked down. I'm so careful about giving out any kind of information to where people would know who somebody was, or I'm just working as a nurse. I have to abide by the HIPAA laws, right? I have to. I've been a nurse for 35 years. I've never been in trouble because we keep that stuff completely anonymous. And I'm that way with, that is something that I've intentionally brought into my work with MUFON and with ufology is that I won't ever mention a name, and I won't even mention a town that the person was from. I love to tell people stories. I'll always ask them. I'll say, do you mind if I share your story? I will not share your name. I won't even say what sex you are, and certainly not tell what town you're in. But and usually people say yes, as long as you can make it so that I can remain anonymous. Because I mean, most of my good UFO reports come in from intentional or from very, it's usually like doctors, police, pilots, people like that. I mean, you've done this too, And the good reports, the witness is very important, if they have security clearances and stuff like that, all the more so. But you don't share that stuff. You got to be really careful about it.
And yeah, I absolutely agree. And when you've got so many people involved in an organization that have access to this information, I mean, that's always a worry too, because your idea on that, which is correct, is something that isn't shared by everyone.
Yeah. Well, every organization, every large organization tends to be amorphous and good luck, trying to, it's like
right.
a herd of elephants. And how are you? So, you got to do your very, very best about that. And I think that's one of the things I love about MUFON. And I'm the first to say there's no such thing as a perfect organization. There's going to be problems. There's different ideologies that people have and different, political basis that they're coming from. And but what I love is that we do work regionally, and so my little concentric area that I take care of, which is Los Angeles and Southern California, I know that we do it correctly here. That's my little sphere of influence, and it's very important to me. And hopefully, people see that we're successful in what we do, that we have wonderful reports that come out of here. It's one of the hot spots, Los Angeles area. Last month we had it was like 80 reports or something.
Oh my gosh!
That's normal here. It's just and like Project Blue Book and good old Dr. Hynek told us 90 to 95% of those are going to be prosaic, and they usually are. But that leaves that 5 to 10% that are unknowns, and I treat those with so much respect and so much love, because I'm living my dream. I mean, this is, I read Hynek's books, I Jacques Vallée and John Mack and all the guys are my heroes. I get to do that now, and I get to do it hands on. And seriously, I have so much respect and so much love for what I do that I make sure I'm doing it correctly.
Right.
All the time.
And I can tell that about you, and that's why you're on the show. Because I like to bring, I want to support people that have a good heart and good intentions and can clearly see, where there are, landmines and different things. And I think that's so important because, really for you to investigate cases and to work with people who have had unusual experiences. I know that that's a hard thing for somebody to grapple with sometimes, and they are, I'm sure, in very, very good hands with you, and you're providing a tremendous support.
Thank you. Well, I love working for, I work with MUFON's experiencer research team as well, as one of my little titles as an ERT member. And, Kathleen Martin is my boss. I work directly under Kathy and Dr. George Medich, and their hearts are just in the right place with it. And I love doing those cases because I'm not trying to prove that somebody's making something up or that they're wrong or that this or that. We're more or less sort of almost like social workers for experiencers. And I love that. I love it. And hearing everybody's stories, you see marker after marker where it, from case to case, as different as they all are, there are certain things that we recognize over and over. And some of those things we keep from the public so that we have a way to, so that they are markers that people don't know about them. So I'll be talking with one person one day, and then the next day I'm talking to somebody, and I hear the exact same story. It even sounds like the same craft that they saw, and the same little tiny details. And there's only so much coincidence that you can have until you have to kind of stand up and take notice and see that that these are related to each other.
And that is interesting, the commonalities and different things. And it is interesting, too, as everybody hopefully knows by now, my husband, worked for Bigelow Aerospace and lived at Skinwalker Ranch for 6 years. And he noticed that there were similarities, commonalities in the types of sightings. And then he, he's listening to Camilio right now and different things, and everything that took place in Camilio is exactly what happened on the ranch. And so those commonalities are important to note.
What a trip, huh?
I know.
It's a great book.
Yes. I mean, he's been on my show a couple times, and Dion, his friend, that experience was just really eye-opening. And I also think it's interesting you mentioned Jacques Vallée, who I mentioned quite frequently as well. He references Camilio quite frequently, and you had mentioned that he just came out and said that some of the abductions can be that the military was involved, or
he brought that up,
and that is interesting. That is interesting.
Yeah, I didn't really expect to hear that from Jacques, but no, he did say that, and it doesn't really surprise me. It's a pretty good cover for stuff, and if you're trying to affect people, blame it on the aliens, right? It's a pretty good thing to blame it on. I think they've been doing that for a while.
I do too.
And that's not to say that all visitations and abductions and stuff are military abduction things. There are certain cases that I've had where right off I kind of think to myself, I recognize this. This sounds like this case and this case and this case. And it's sometimes it'll be in the barracks or it'll be in a dormitory. But they're just like certain things that are set up that I've noticed that are common, and I'm always making a mental note about those. Mm-hmm. And it seems like the thing that they have in common is that people walk away from those experiences horrified.
Right.
Sometimes they need to get psychological help afterwards. They're never happy about the experience.
No, I could imagine not at all. And I think that's really interesting. And I want to just throw this out there. And I would recommend, if you can get your hands on a copy of this has been a really interesting read for me. It's called The Controllers, A New Hypothesis of Alien Abductions by Martin Cannon. And he talks specifically in depth about, the MK Ultra program and the potential continuation, and then using the abduction scenario as a cover for continuing the program. And I think that it's really interesting. And I never in a million years, 5 years ago, if you were to ask me if I ever would have gone down this road, I would have said no. There's absolutely no way. But now, like I was mentioning to you, with the things that I know and understand about Skinwalker Ranch, I am going down this road because I think it's an important road to go down.
I mean, why would aliens bother to horrify people? Why would they go and intentionally horrify a person, destroy their lives? I mean, the abduction stories that I hear, where I think that it's valid, where it was probably ET or interdimensional involvement, they're always given a calming message. They're told that there's a reason for this. You know, we need your DNA. You know, we need this and that. And there's always somebody to explain something to the person to sort of calm them and make it so it doesn't destroy their lives. But then there's the other side of the coin, where I have people that wish they could choke their entities to death, you know, and people that want to, you know, take a gun to bed with them at night. And some people do, you know, because they think if they can grab their gun before they go completely paralyzed, that they'll be able to shoot the alien, you know. And I wonder about those. I mean, maybe there are renegade ETs out there, but I don't know, you know. I mean, I think that perhaps the real negative ones, that maybe that is, you know, a sign that it came from a governmental experiment. And we have to maybe, it has to be one of the possibilities that a good ufologist will keep there in their toolbox and be able to refer to, and at least, you know, be open to that possibility.
Very important. And I think, and I just, you know, like I said, I mean, my whole world has been turned upside down, and by the revelations of late. And it's just, I think that is, and I'm glad that you're stressing that. I think that is really important for somebody coming into this field to really understand. And I think that's also important for humanity, because if these things are truly taking place, which you know that wasn't the case of Chris, then we need to be aware of that, because this should not be happening to American citizens, you know. And so it's, I don't know, the whole thing is so trippy. But on a lighter note, I mean, what are some of the coolest cases, the most interesting cases that you have investigated?
Oh, I've got a panoply of those, you know. I mean, I just recently closed a case where a mom and her son, her adult son, and the mom was just highly educated woman, you know, a university graduate in the psychology field. And she was with her son driving, and they saw a boomerang-shaped craft, or it was more like a V-shaped craft. This was in a suburban area. I'm not going to mention the town or where, but what she mentioned to me, and I spoke with the whole family, as they drove up closer, they're looking at, it's like, what is that? What is, it's not a helicopter, it's not a, you know, but they're getting closer and closer, and none of the family members were into UFOs. That wasn't something they even thought of. They're trying to figure out what blimp this is, you know. But they get closer and closer, and it's this V, and it's hanging there. It's about 40 feet across, and time started getting weird for them. The closer that they got, there was a psychological effect where they felt very calm. And Mom was saying, I don't know why I felt calm in this situation, because it's scary. I'm looking at it, you know, and this is something that's very unfamiliar, and I don't think that the government has anything like this craft. But they get closer to it, and she said that it intentionally showed its lights, that this thing was sort of like, it didn't have wings. It was like two bars connected in the front, 40 feet across. But this thing is hanging there in space, no visible propulsion that we know of can do this, and it leans over to the side so that she can see these blue flashing lights, and that made things even stranger for them. When they saw the lights, she said that time just got weird, that things became very peaceful and ultra quiet. They experienced what we call the Oz effect, is what they experienced. So they watch this thing, and she doesn't even know why she's acting the way that she's acting or why her son is acting the way he is. Anyway, it showed its lights to them. It went back to its original sort of where it was equilaterally balanced to the ground the way it was when they originally saw it. It turns around and it starts leaving just like rooftop level over the houses. And they watch it go until it vanishes into the vanishing point. Now, the mom and the son, he was like 21 years old. Neither of them said anything to the other. They just kept on driving home. They got home and things start normalizing. They start feeling back to normal. And the mom's asking the son, did you see that? I mean, is that just me? Did I have like some kind of a mental, disarrangement that just happened to myself? And it's like, no, I saw it, Mom. I saw the same thing. It was just the weirdest sighting. So what wound up happening is that the mom started having visitations at night. And it was, they were very benevolent. It was the small gray entities, and then a mantis, a taller entity that looked more like a praying mantis that would communicate with her and tell her it's all going to be okay. This is important what we're doing. You won't really be able to understand what we're doing, but just trust me. It's going to be okay, and you're safe with us. Now the dad became involved. He started experiencing missing time as well. Same kind of stuff. He said, and Dad is an MD, by the way. He's a medical doctor. Now, the three of them had never had experiences with UFOs, although the sister, the mom's sister, the son's aunt, had a UFO sighting when she was a young girl, and it was kind of an extraordinary sighting too. So here we've got the familial thing going again. We've got like the proverbial, the one alien that's compassionate and it's explaining this to the mom, and it's all done mind to mind. There's no verbiage involved, right? Anyway, this is just like one of those beautiful and wonderful cases where it had so many markers that I've seen before in other cases, and even the same craft. I have another case that happened a year before theirs that the craft was the same. The light arrangement was the same, and there were visitations, and they were benevolent visitations. There was no fear involved, and that's one of my recent unknowns that I've closed, and those are the cases that I just love. It just everything about it. There's nothing human sounding there at all, and that one I would call probably an actual encounter with something that's not human. Other people might not agree with that, but that's what I see in this one. I didn't see any of the fear or the negativity at all in it. Although, they were being taken, and DNA was being taken.
And so all of this is so interesting, and I really want to, when we get back from the break, I want to talk a little bit about, the commonalities like you were mentioning. I think those are important to really hit on, and I also want to find out more about the Oz effect when we get back from break. And I just, like I said, this is all so interesting to me. And did you? Yeah, I don't know. When you are investigating cases, do you ever recommend hypnosis?
That one is, I prefer not to use a hypnotic regression person. Sometimes people just really, really, really want to remember the details. And what I will tell them, and different people feel differently about this, but I'll say that, if you go and have surgery done, there's a reason why they want you to forget it, right? Some of it you might not understand. It might even seem, combative. But it was something that was important and needed. So, but for the people that insist on being hypnotically regressed, I do have a list of people in every city in the United States and even other countries where there are licensed therapists that do it. But I usually, I try to not get people to go that route. I think that the more you think about stuff, and if you use immersion therapy and things like that, that you can get to your memories without going through hypnosis. Because there always is that risk of implanting false memories.
Right. Or there is the risk of going to somebody who's getting funding from the CIA. Or, and is putting you in their little experiment. And so, I don't know, call me crazy. Yeah. I would be definitely careful about that. And I think too, I question whether some of the people who are involved on the UFO front, I mean, like you say, they could be implanting or leading somebody to a determination about what went on when that actually, wasn't the case, and that can be damaging as well.
I wish I could send them all to Kathleen Martin, but she's in Florida, so it's a little limited in her range of where she can go. And she's already so darned busy, that they're the busiest woman I know, and I know some busy women and men, but yeah, she does it right, and I think that Dolores Cannon, I believe it's who came up with the quantum healing technique, and that seems to be a better way to go if you are going to go for hypnosis. It's very time consuming, but they are very detailed and want to make sure that the person is okay and that there aren't false memories implanted. It's very time consuming if you want to go that route, but that's the way that I would prefer people would go. Anyway,
Absolutely. Thank you. I appreciate that, because this is, it gets into so many murky things. And like I said, 5-10 years ago, I would have, I never would have thought that I would feel so hesitant about recommending things, and I think that hypnosis now, just from certain things, I think you do have to be very, very, very careful. And then, yeah, definitely. But we're going to take a break, and then we get to hear some of your happy, beautiful music.
Oh, thank you.
I love it. It is gorgeous. And so this is a song, Seventh Sister. Can you give us a little bit of background on that?
Sure. Well, we were talking about the constellation, the Pleiades, and they say that at one time you could see 7 distinct stars. That's why they call it the Seven Sisters. But maybe 1,000 years or so ago, one of the sisters dimmed. And I was thinking, well, what if that was your lucky star? And then I sort of had this story that just sort of built itself in my mind of this boatman who's out, he's in his boat, he's looking for his lucky star, and it's disappeared. And the story, it's fictitious, but it sort of wrote itself, and that's how I wrote The Seventh Sister.
Oh, wonderful. Well, I look forward to playing this for everyone. Earl, thank you so much for being here. We're going to take a break listening to your beautiful song, and so we will be back. I'm Erica Lukes. This is UFO Classified. You can go to UFOclassified.com, which I wanted to say in the next week we are going to be unveiling a new website, which is going to make it a lot easier for you. It'll have a lot of cool new things on it, and we'll be doing a monthly newsletter. And I will have my friend Gordon Lohr write articles in the newsletter about the history of NICAP, James McDonald, all sorts of cool things, along with other articles from people in the field. It is going to be fun, so definitely sign up for that. And if you want to help keep UFO Classified on the air, please go visit us at Patreon and pledge your support. It means a lot to me, and I can continue to really press for answers. I can make sure history is preserved and that we are moving in the right direction, because we're swimming upstream. So we got to do this, and we're doing it together. Thank you. We're going to take a break, and here is Earl's beautiful song, Seventh Sister.
Scintillas in the stream, hoping for what's true. I'm trawling for honor in this shallow pool. Borealis starlit crown arches over the Puget Sound. Berenice's hair
Wow, I have the chills. That is absolutely stunning, and we have, great feedback about your beautiful music in the chat rooms. Thank you. I have goosebumps. That was gorgeous.
Thank you.
I love it. I know, and that's one of those things. Music makes me so happy, and I've been I spent last night when I could pull myself away from the Androffel files, writing a new song and stuff, and I love it. It just takes you to a really happy, wonderful place, which we need when we spend our lives kind of digging into the UFO thing. And I want to, and Earl, thank you again for being here. You are such a delight. I'm so happy to finally talk to you. But I want to just read a little bit, because I've been trying to give information out about the Androffel files and things like that. And I mentioned in the first hour that I had a letter here in Ann's files. It was a letter from Paul Benowitz on October 2nd, 1985. And I want to just read a little bit of this. He says in this letter, my continued harassment may well be directly due to the U.S. involvement. If so, it is not a very fair situation. What the final outcome will be, I do not know. Since my surveillance flights in there starting late May, the natives up there have reported camouflaged troops with camouflaged hands and faces in there. Also, as many as 5 helicopters that are unmarked have been reported. The natives obviously are scared to death and will not approach the troops to see if they are carrying weapons. And so that's just a little portion of a letter that was written by Paul Benowitz. And we mentioned in the first part of the show with the unfortunate outcome of that when he reported his what he thought were UFO sightings, which were probably our technology. And we mentioned Greg Bishop, Earl did, and his wonderful work on Project Beta about that very case. And so I just wanted to read that to you. It's very poignant, and it makes you think. And so, Earl, welcome back. I want to just tell people who are joining us for the second hour that you are a MUFON chief investigator and assistant director, state director in Southern California. And you're also, as we've just heard, a very beautiful musician, songwriter, guitarist. It's awesome. And then we've got to mention Gigi and Thor, because by the looks of it, you've got some pretty cool cats at home.
We do. There's a backstory I can give you on Gigi and Thor.
I'd love it.
People appreciate. Well, in Los Angeles, it's just the nature of where we live. My wife works over at a major film studio, and so there's always this little overlap, and how many degrees of separation from people. But the original owners that both of our cats came from a cat rescue, and the original owner was Val Kilmer. I couldn't believe it. He's who named Thor.
Really?
Yeah. I know the people in the rescue, the cat rescue named Gigi, but Val Kilmer named Thor, and he's like a little ginger tomcat. You've seen them. It's just like it's like
so
they come out of the same mold, And but anyhow, apparently Val had gotten the cats, and Thor is a little. He will strike out at you. He until he gets to know you, and it's taken him with us like a year. And he'll still once in a while, his wild nature will come through, and he'll claw at me if I suddenly decide to pet him or something. But he's a sweetheart, such a good boy. It's not intentional, But I guess that Val had a young his kid is 6 or 7 years old, and he kept getting clawed, so he had to take the cats back. And it's a mom and a dad. It's a mom and the son.
Oh,
Thor's
cool.
Gigi's kid, right?
Oh, that's awesome.
So we had a perfect home for them, and they're just so great, and especially during this whole period of having to sequester at home because of the COVID virus.
You mean that fake virus? Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
You haven't been out spitting on everything? Come on.
Oh, God. Don't even get me started.
Oh, come on. It might be kind of fun, though.
I try not to be combative, but that's one of the things that'll get me, pissed off at people. But no, it's not a fake virus, and we're being good, and I've got my masks that I wear in public because
thank you for considering other people. You are so kind.
Well, and they don't always wear masks around me, and I been trying to. We finally got a N95 mask source, so at least I can protect myself. Yeah. I'm ready to go back to work, and I need the PPE because I work as a nurse as my day job, and I'm working with sick people that have a propensity to catch stuff like that. So right. I just don't want to. It's not something I want to catch. I sadly know one guy that local musician who passed away from COVID, and another guy is in his mid-30s, a new father, and it's somebody that we know, and he caught it, and he had stroke-like symptoms. I mean, he had some real problems, and he was a young guy. So no, it's a real thing, and you guys need to protect yourselves and protect others. And if everybody wore a mask and socially distanced, this thing would be over in a few months. Right. 2 months, it would be done. We wouldn't ever have to deal with it again. We would have beaten it. But sadly, it's become this political football, and people are, treating it that way. And anyway.
I know, and I mean, I know that this is a UFO show, but I mean, unfortunately, some of this insane behavior is running rampant in the UFO community, which is shocking. That this, you'd see people talking about, not wearing masks and different things, and how they're bad for us, and I can't breathe. And I mean, I will say that Utah is the home of stupidity when it comes to crazy people out there. That we've been on the news, made the national news more than I can even count because of people that are showing up to these anti-masking rallies and storming school buildings, and it's just like, oh my Lord, it's really it's frightening. And my husband is working on the COVID response team for the Department of Health and for the National Guard, and he gets to go in, and he goes in and sees these facilities where people are affected and are not winning the battle, or the healthcare workers like you who are on the front line every day to protect all of us, where they're becoming sick, and it's just a really alarming thing. And so I just am very glad that my people that listen to my show have common sense again and wear masks and do their part to protect people. That's all I'm saying. Yeah. So,
that's new. 1918, we went through this before, and people had to wear masks, and people didn't like it. They didn't want to socially distance. They called them muzzles in 1918 as well. But eventually the Spanish flu, we overcame it. But just like now, there was a lot of people who were dragging their feet as far as doing the right thing, and so it took a long time, where it probably could have been dealt with within a couple of months. But it's the same thing here. Very sad. I see more people wearing masks now. But, even just 2 months ago, it was very, very frustrating. I would carry an extra one in my pocket and hand them out, and people would get angry at me, for looking out for them. I wouldn't even say anything, and it's not a political thing. It's not a political football. It's taking care of your neighbor, and your neighbor is taking care of you. If everybody plays into this correctly, then everybody's going to be okay. Nobody's going to get sick, and it'll be over. But sadly, it's been treated as a conspiracy theory, and God forbid, amazing. I can't believe that UFO people would be into conspiracy theories.
Well, we got a little problem with the wackadoodles out there, so it's like, I don't know, get your Q t-shirt on and go out there and believe stuff from a couple of crazy people. I don't know. It's sad. It is sad, and it just shows. Yeah, it just shows that. Unfortunately, social media and the internet can be used to manipulate people's thought process on things. And, at some point in time, we got to wake up and see that, that some of these things are endangering our loved ones and ourselves. And this is one of them. So get a clue, wear a mask. And if you have anything to say about it, you come see me. Maybe don't.
Yeah, me too. I don't. Yeah, you can talk to me on my Facebook page.
Exactly. We'll keep it at that.
And you know what? I'm so careful to not share political stuff. I'm political. I mean, anybody who's a thinker is going to be political, right? But
Right.
I keep my politics to myself mostly, but every once in a while, something like this is not political in nature. If I said it was a hoax, I would have to turn my nursing license back in, because I've taken microbiology. I know about the Spanish flu. I know about, this is what I do. I wear a mask in the hospital all the time. It's to protect you, and it's to protect myself. It's a two-edged sword. I mean, I want to protect the people I'm taking care of, and I want to be able to live to see next week as well, I mean, it's not a political thing, but it's been unfortunately politicized.
I know. It's just a really sad thing, and I think, again, it just highlights some of the major flaws in the UFO community, that we're so readily willing to believe everything that is thrown at us, especially from unverified sources. And it's crazy when I go back and I look through my beautiful archive that I have. I look back at some of these old periodicals and books and things, and everything in ufology that has built a foundation for this is this source that has to remain anonymous, or this blah 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 blah. And you just think, really, are we really that stupid that we are actually not able to say, wait a minute, if the source is unverified, what? I mean, how does that help us in trying to get to the truth of things? We're just spinning more yarn. And so, I mean, what is your thought on some of that, and some of the community and their angle on things?
I love the community. I love my friends. I love my acquaintances, the people that I know through the UFO phenomenon. It's just like people are thinkers, people are open to just more than just what's on the surface. But unfortunately, there's also that fear factor, and there are people that think that, well, because this is a conspiracy, then all conspiracy theories must be real. And they leave themselves open for just confusion, and unfortunately, that's an issue in the UFO community. I really try to be a bridge builder here. There's so much contention between people sometimes. Right. Because especially if you've gone through something, if you've seen something, if you've experienced something, it's very hard for a person to be able to say, well, my experience is valid, but this person's experience that's different from mine is valid too. It's hard, to hold both ideals and ideas, one in each hand, but you sort of have to be able to do that, or else you're going to wind up having more enemies than friends, and so I really do try to hold, keep an open mind. I try to be extra kind.
I know you are kind. That's what I like about you. You are a very kind man.
Yeah, I'm a deadhead. I'm an old hippie, Grateful Dead guy, and that's Uncle John's band. It's got that
fire on the mountain, baby.
Yes. Are you kind? That's a good question, and I ask myself that all the time. And before I write a post that's going to be angst filled or something, this isn't kind, Earl. You step away, give it an hour, and come back to it. An hour later, if I'm still like maybe I will write about it, but, I try to step away from stuff. I try to keep peace with people because, I don't have to agree with all of your ideas to be your friend. To love people, I don't have to agree with everything that, my wife and I love our relationship. We've been together for 20 years now, but we don't agree with each other on every little silly, particle of everything, You got to have a little levity in your life, and you got to try a little tenderness. That old song,
yes,
goes, and try a little tenderness and be kind to people, and I think that comes back to you too. That karma is a thing, and if you go out of your way to be kind, it eventually it will come back to you.
And that is nice, and I love that. I mean, I can just tell you just exude that kindness. You really, really do. And for me, I mean, I have always had a very tender heart and been very kind, and I'm kind to people, unfortunately to a fault, and that is especially in the UFO community. That is, I've learned some lessons, some very hard lessons, and so when I speak out on things, it is because I don't want people to have to go through what I went through. And there are people that prey on others in the UFO community. And like you mentioned, there's that the angle of them, the government or whoever, trying to purposefully stir up stuff. And so it's one of those things. I used to be a lot kinder, and now I've gotten to the point where I'm just like, something's wrong here, and I'm going to, take a stand and do what my grandmother did, who was very politically active and a very community-oriented person. And I don't know, it's just interesting. This is, I don't know about you, and I'm sure I could answer this, but I'll ask you. But I mean, how much has your pursuit in all of this changed your life, like for the better? Like, I mean, tell us, because it's obviously, I mean, I'm so grateful that I do what I do.
Oh, it's the most amazing thing to have found the deep and wonderful friends that I've found over the last 6 years or so. In the UFO community is just astounding to me. And I mean, I have, so many friends that have PhDs, for goodness sake. I mean, I think of my dear friend, Dr. Irina Scott, who's written wonderful books. Her Sacred Corridors book is just beautiful and wonderful. And she worked at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. She used to be in the DEA. She, has been in governmental circles. She had her doctorate working with Bonobo. Like apes. Is sort of like. I mean, it's just her life is just such an amazing thing. And she's the great-granddaughter of Purdue, of Purdue University. And I think of like Irina, I think of people like Greg Bishop that we, have as a mutual friend, is one of the great thinkers I know. Is just such a brilliant man. Paul Hynek, I'm dear friends with Dr. Hynek's son, Paul.
Oh, that's great.
And I love Paul, and you get talking with him, and we all know stories about Project Blue Book, but he lived with it. It was in his kitchen, sitting at the table having dinner with a family. Travis Walton back in the day. It's just affected my life in such a beautiful and enriching manner that I can't even begin to tell you. I used to, playing music and writing your own songs and playing in front of people, that was always an enriching thing. But if I didn't have a guitar around my neck, I used to get really super shy. I'd have stage fright like you wouldn't imagine. And working in ufology and with the UFO community has just opened me up to where I just feel so comfortable just being myself and talking about this stuff. I wouldn't give it up for anything. It's so meaningful to me. It's more than words, it really is.
That's awesome.
I can't even express it. And I'm a wordsmith, but I can't even express it.
Well, no, I mean, I agree. And I as much as I try to shine a light on things, and it can get very heavy at times. I mean, I would never not do this because I'm so passionate about it, because I've had so many experiences, standing on top of a mountain in Norway with Erling Strand, and
wow.
Sitting at a table with the best scientists in Europe, and me. And, I will say that was an interesting experience because there was a French scientist, of course, but whatever, not to stereotype those Frenchies. But, when he was, he looked at me and he asked me, why are you here exactly? And I'm just like, oh, snappy doodle do. But it was funny because, you know, the other scientists from Italy and elsewhere were very kind. They weren't so hesitant and things. But it was just, you know, like I look back at these experiences, or, you know, meeting Chris, doing all of these wonderful things, going to different conferences where there are people there that are just so grateful to have somebody to talk to. And, you know, it's been as frustrating as it's been, and as frightening as it's been because of some of the stalking and abuse that I have had to endure and different things. I'm hooked. I mean, I will not, there's not a day that gets up where like the first thing out of my mouth, and Chris is sitting here, my husband, just nodding like, oh, she ain't kidding about this one. But I mean, I'm just not like, you know, I wake up and I'm like, ding, ding, ding. Okay, I just got this great idea about UFOs. I just had this thought about this. And, and he's just like, oh, honey, perhaps Valium might be good. I mean, he never says that, but he probably thinks it half the time. But it's just like, it's awesome.
Scientists did you hang out with before you did this?
You know what? I mean, I've always had an interesting mix of friends. I mean, politicians, you know, different scientists. I mean, I've had a very interesting life, and it sounds like you have as well. But I've never, you know, I've never had these experiences. You know, I mean, I just am so grateful for all of them, and I mean, there are lots of things I haven't even shared with the world about what I've witnessed or who I've been with and different things, and it's like, oh my gosh, I love it. And I get so, like, looking through the Ann Druffel files, which I have been so fortunate to acquire. I mean, I'm telling you, 70 boxes that are chock full of correspondence from Hynek, from Valet, from, you know, I mean, all of, you know, Bill Chalker. You've got, I mean, you know, you've got the correspondence from QFOS and, you know, NICAP and all of the NICAP reports and different things. And then the pictures of James McDonald, you know, and then she's got, I mean, she's got, you know, 100 or so audio cassette interviews with, I mean, it's like, you know, I mean, it's just, I sit there every night on the couch. I bring, you know, I've got boxes and boxes that I'm looking at every day and going through, and I'm trying to get things organized so I can get things digitized and things. But it's like, I mean, seriously, I'm sitting here with the original photo in my hand of this case. And, you know, it's like, what a trip. It's like, this is the coolest thing on the planet for me. I love it.
It's a blessing, isn't it? It's a blessing is the way I feel about it, you know? And I feel like there's another hand in there. I don't know if it's a higher power or if it's E.T. or you know, some Campbellian thing, you know? But I feel like, you know, those were my heroes at one time, you know? You know, Kathleen Marden is a great example. Somebody whose books I had read and who I looked up to. And now she's not just a colleague, but somebody that I love and care about and will call up just because, you know, if she's sick or something, you know, it's like friends, you know, check up on each other. It's just like this amazing, wonderful thing, you know. Or Travis Walton, you know. Now my grandson, he's a Travis Walton fan. He independently, he watched the movie, you know, the original one, you know, and which wasn't done real well, by the way. You know, Travis, you know, will be the.
He
first
wasn't
to
happy
tell
about that, yeah.
They Hollywooded that thing up, but my grandson, when you know, he's like, well, Grandpa, do you know about this Travis guy? You know, it's like, I know him actually, you know? and I was able to give him, you know, like an autographed picture and stuff, and he signed his book and stuff and my grandson suddenly thinks I'm Indiana Jones, you know.
I'm waiting for my daughter to think that about me and my UFO obsession, but that's going to be another 20 years in the making there.
It'll happen. Well, so far, you know, it's just been my grandson. My son, once in a while, he'll get a little gobsmacked about something, you know. But I mean, my heroes and the authors that I loved, that I read, are now colleagues and friends, and it's so meaningful, and it just enhanced my life in ways that I never thought possible. Right,
and it, you know, like for me, it's, you know, I mean, I look at the fact that had I not been, involved and really digging into Skinwalker Ranch, then I wouldn't have met my husband. And we talk about that all the time. I mean, it was just such a crazy experience for like 1 second, this is happening, and the next second we're getting married, and then we both have this kind of a mission where we're trying to find answers and expose corruption, and it's there. I mean, and to me, there is something, very, whether it's divine or whatever it is, but there's this external influence, and that's been a very powerful thing, and it's all so crazy. But I'm glad that we both love it and we feel passionate, and there's something positive about that, and that is the thing. When you get into this, like for me, I mean, I learned so much about astronomy, geology, about human behavior. I've learned so many things outside of the UFO world that have really enriched my life. And it's a cool thing. And you also, with that, there's that note of, also be careful and don't, assume that because this person is talking to you that they have your best intentions at heart. They could be, you know what I mean? There are little lessons that you have to learn.
You can't be naive, you can't.
Right.
You have to be circumspect. But, I mean, you expressed that so beautifully. And I mean, how it became this external thing, and you met your husband through it. And I mean, that's just, I think that's the sign of just it being a very real phenomenon that kind of pulls you in and becomes this a positive. And there's negative stuff. There's always, the yin and yang of things. And you have to, with every beautiful thing, you have to be careful about the darkness that's there too.
Right.
I mean, you need the darkness to set off the light, right? You need shadows and light, Joni Mitchell,
Right,
the shadows and light. And you need both. But you have to remember, there's the darkness there, so you have to be circumspect and careful. But I absolutely recognize in your life the same thing that's in mine. It seems like there's another hand in there. And I'm not sure, again, I don't know, is it God? Is it E.T.? Is it, I don't know, but I like it, We'll carry on with it, please,
Right, yeah.
Wherever you are.
Yeah, and like I said, I will never really regret the day that I got involved in this publicly, because it's always been in my life, from the time I was a little child, and it will always intrigue me for multiple reasons, and I just think I don't know, I'm hooked. What can I say? And so I have a question from Peter in the chat, and he wants to know, in your case with entities, do they ever identify themselves, or are they always nameless?
Mine have always been nameless. The ones that I've met, I only had one occasion where I actually saw entities, and where there wasn't a whole lot of interaction. I was kind of being tooled with, and it was a DNA gathering thing. It was, but more than that, it's such a question mark still. I don't understand it. I didn't get any names, but I know people who have entities that they've known since they were like 5, 7 years old. One friend of mine who's a Homeland kind of a big mucky muck in Homeland Security. His experiences started when he was a 7-year-old. It horrified him at first because it confused him, but after a while it sort of became second nature to him, and he wound up giving his entities names. And they treated him kindly. I mean, they were gone for a year, and this was after I had closed his case. But I always keep in touch with certain people. You kind of know the ones that you should keep in touch with, and he's been a very good friend to me. And for him, they were gone for a while, and they came back almost, it seemed almost like to just say, we still love you, we're still here, we still can. I think that they sort of finished whatever project that they were working on with him as a child and as a young man. But, so he gave his names. Other people, I've heard people that have said that their entities told them what their names were, but it's not all that super common. I think that names may be something that we do, and it maybe isn't as necessary when you communicate telepathically, perhaps, is what it is.
Okay.
They perhaps, recognize the signature, the mental or telepathic signature of each other, and it goes beyond words, as we know.
Okay, thank you for answering that. And he also has another great question as to whether you have investigated any interesting cases in Topanga Canyon.
Yes. Oh, yeah, absolutely. I have one case. I was just back in communication with a guy who he and two friends back in the 1990s, they were in Topanga Canyon going to Topanga Grill. And they're going across the street. They'd gone to a movie and going across the street to get some late dinner and dance or whatever. And suddenly there were three football-shaped, each one was the size of a UPS truck, balls of light that seemed like plasma. He thought that it was maybe ball lightning at first. This guy was skeptical about what he was seeing, even as he was seeing it. But they were stopped in their tracks. These three balls of light, they're maybe 30 feet over them. And as they're watching them, they left one after another. They shot off towards the ocean over the Topanga Grill there. And there was one that was left after the two. It was almost like there was a UFO for each of them, right? There's three humans and three UFOs. The last one hung just a little bit longer, and then instead of shooting off towards the ocean, it just disappeared. So after that, they went into the club and they're talking to everybody. They're like, "Oh my God, we saw UFOs." And the reaction of the people in there was like, "Well, what else is new? It's Topanga Canyon, we have lots of UFOs out here." But it was a beautiful encounter that I love that one,
And so what about abduction cases?
I have lots of them because I work for the experiencer research team.
But in Topanga Canyon?
Topanga Canyon, I know of a few of them. There's one where there was an actress. It wasn't even a MUFON case. It was a friend of one of my nursing clients who lived up there. I actually took a job in Topanga Canyon so I could spend my lunch period and my it was a 12-hour case, and I worked the midnight shift, and I sort of took it so that, well, maybe I'll see something. It was way up in the hills there. It was, you'd have to, it kind of scared me because if there was a fire, I would have been trapped,
Mm-hmm.
It was an issue. And I never saw anything, but I heard the story of one woman who you would know who she is. She's a famous actress who's a repeat abductee in Topanga Canyon. For her, it was not a negative experience. She said that it was a positive experience, and which is interesting, taken against your will, but yet, she felt like there were more good things about it than bad, which I can't explain to you. You would have to ask her, and I'm not at liberty to give you her name. But yeah, there are definitely abduction cases in Topanga Canyon.
Oh, interesting. We need to talk about that because, as Peter was mentioning in the chat room, Ann Druffel in her collection, she has a lot of abduction cases that she was working on, in there. And so we'll have to compare notes sometime and dig into that a little bit more and see what, explanations we can find, whether, it's extraterrestrial or something the government's
dimensional
doing. Right. So many possibilities.
But honestly, I don't think that it's all military.
Right.
I honestly don't. I think that some of it, though, probably is. I hear enough stories where, people will see blue berets or green berets that are part of it. Sometimes it'll be underground in a facility, is what people think. I have one case is a reptilian case that is the case that keeps on giving. right now they're checking out her DNA, and there seems to be some very strange things about this woman's DNA. But her father was a Navy SEAL.
Okay.
And she was born with some birth defects, and she believes that her father approached his superiors and that they had this option for him. And it's been, some of it has been good, some has been bad. And it appeared to be, humans and like reptilian aliens.
And I wonder if it is human. I mean, I think if it is a human thing, and the intelligence community or different factions are doing this to, like I said, continue MK Ultra and different things. I mean, wouldn't it be? I mean, it would make sense that they're, I don't know, trying to perhaps throw in the UFO or the reptilian. And if somebody is abducted by, there could be all sorts of things that are involved. I mean, they could be drugged, they could be given, a certain. I mean, I just think it's so important when there's a potential for a military case to. I don't know what. We got to look into this more, though, because I think something is definitely rotten in Denmark with regards to what I have learned, and especially with Skinwalker Ranch. Like I keep saying, I sound like a broken record, but it's like, oh my Lord, Chris was, talking today about Camellia, like I was mentioning at the first start of the show, and how all of these technologies that we have in our arsenal were being used on Dion, and they're the same technologies that he experienced at Skinwalker Ranch. And what is that capable of doing to a person? And is this going on? If it is going on, this is a big story, and we should try to work together as people who love the subject and love other human beings to try to get to the bottom of it.
I agree with you. I think that it's definitely something that's probably going on. It would explain a lot of the more negative stories I hear. So I have one guy he was abducted from his barracks after this long sort of preamble to what he actually experienced. His car was enveloped with electricity. And this was a guy who was just the most down-to-earth, talking with him. I spoke with the whole family multiple times. And they said, well, Dad's been talking about this forever, as long as we remember. And it was, it's not like UFO abductions were on, on TV and stuff. It was back in the 1960s he was talking about it. And, for him, it was this horror story. And the entities told him they were going to take his soul from him. It was just, he's a Christian man, and it scared him. And for something like that, and it happened in a military base, well, boy, oh boy, it sure makes me wonder who was behind that.
Right, right. And it's interesting, too, because, I mean, I investigated cases, here that were on military installations. And now that I'm looking back at them and some of the things that they're saying, I'm like, oh, wow. I don't know. I mean, that in and of itself sounds like a conspiracy theory, but to me that sounds like a much more plausible answer given the history of what has taken place with human experimentation and different things. You have to wonder about that, and that's a really dark and ugly place to go, and I don't like it. But it's could be true. But on a little lighter note, let's get talked about the Oz effect.
Oh, sure. Well, I've experienced the Oz effect myself. My wife and I had a weird, 3 weird experiences when I first became a ufologist, when I first started working for MUFON, actually, where our room flooded with light. And I mean, I don't want to talk too much about it. It makes me uncomfortable to talk about it. But the way that it began was our room started flooding with light, and it didn't seem to have a source. And along with that light came this great feeling of peace. Like I didn't have a care in the world. Now, this was back when we lived in Burbank, and we had a cricket problem in our rafters. We hated it. We had cats and stuff, and we didn't want to call out the exterminators. We were afraid of, so there were always crickets going, and it was absolutely silent. like the cone of silence and Get Smart. I mean, that just comes to mind for some reason. It was just unnaturally, no street sounds, no nothing. It was just like muffled, like the universe ended 10 feet away from me in like a concentric circle. And that was the Oz effect. And I think that what happens, there's something about the light, with UFOs. A stealth craft, you don't put a bunch of lights spinning around a stealth craft, right? I mean, you don't. If you're trying to be stealthy, you don't have any lights on it. You paint it flat black. You go at 2 in the morning and hope nobody sees you. But UFOs are usually all lit up. And in hypnotism, you can use light to hypnotize people. It can be sort of like the pendulum that people would wave in front of you, that would sort of open you up to that experience. And I think that perhaps it's something similar, that somehow or another, that this light that is more than light, that's the way people describe it, it's the way that I describe it, the light that is more than light somehow or another makes their space into your space. That it sort of melds the two spaces. And it allows for strangeness, high strangeness to take place. Now, as the light got brighter, I was unable to move, the brighter it got, until I finally couldn't move a muscle. I was sort of at their mercy. But I was calmed, so I didn't care. Now, if it had just been me, I hadn't taken LSD since high school, so it probably wasn't an acid flashback. I don't have a history of mental breakdowns.
Well, you did mention Timothy Leary, so I don't know.
I mentioned Timothy Leary, yeah, but no, that's not really what I do. But for some reason, this happened, and it happened 3 nights in a period of a week. Now, I saw entities, and I had a weird, extraordinary experience with it. The second, and that time, when I was finally able to move, I shook my wife, and I'm like yelling and screaming. I was just like hysterical. It was not what I wanted, not what I ever expected to experience. If I met aliens, I want it to be like Val Thor or something,
Well, yeah, that would be good.
Yeah, well, it wasn't Val Thor. This was like the little robotic gray guys and some faceless thing standing in the corner, overseeing it all, and it was horrifying. The second, my wife, she thought that I had a mental breakdown. She was so angry. She said, "You joined this crazy UFO group, and oh my God, is this what I have to look forward to?" Was her reaction. Well, 2 nights later, our room flooded with light again, and my wife was the one that was shaking me. And she starts pacing back and forth, and she's going, "Oh my God, Earl, you need to tell your little friends they need to leave us the F alone." She didn't say F, but you can, fill in the blanks. I already have insomnia as it is, and I don't need this in my life. Yeah.
Right.
And then the third night we both woke up. We were asleep. And again, our room was flooding with light and didn't have a source that seemed to permeate the walls somehow. We ran to the window, and it was all lit up outside as well, but it seemed to be coming from above our house. You couldn't see anything because the light was so bright. Neighbors' lights were turning on, their porch lights and stuff, and then suddenly it just blinked out. And that was the third time it happened. My wife never saw entities. I did. It wasn't something that I would want to repeat. It scared the hell out of me. And I think that, it was probably more than just ontological shock, because when I was having my experience, I thought that they were going to exsanguinate me. I was thinking about the cows that they find with no footprints or anything around them, and then they're bloodless. And I felt like I was being drained of, I didn't know if it was energy or blood, but it felt like it was one or the other or both. It was not a positive experience. And I wasn't being given a calming message by anybody. There was like a tall entity standing in the corner, but he wasn't having anything to do with me either. It was very impersonal. So it seemed like they got whatever it was that they wanted, and it shut down. And then there were two other experiences where it was just the light and the silence. Third time, it was almost like once we started moving around and we were trying to figure out what was going on, you could hear sounds, beyond just like the 10 feet perimeter that the light was, flooding from. So that's my own personal experience.
Well, thank you for sharing.
I don't share it all that much, but I feel comfortable talking about it here because I think that it's something that people need to be aware of. And I don't know that it was aliens. I went and I talked to Peter Robbins about it. He's one of my mentors. And even he was, like, I could tell, it's just like, well, it's kind of weird. You join MUFON and suddenly you have this experience.
I was just going to say exactly the same thing.
And,
Yep.
Peter went through some bad stuff with a guy who was, making things up, apparently. And then I called my state director, Jeff, who I love like God, and he's my mentor. And he's like rolling. Oh, I didn't call him about it. I talked to him. I went to his house. I drove 3.5 hours to get to San Luis, the town he lives in. And I'm telling him, and it's not what he wants to hear from his new field investigator. He's, Jeff.
Right.
And he can be kind of nuts and bolts about stuff. And this was not, falling under any principle of science that we know of, It's not what he wanted to hear. I was afraid he was going to fire me, And I went to Kathleen Marden, and she was the first person that was able to kind of, give me at least some answers. She said that's usually not the experience people have, but people do have negative experiences. It is known that there are some renegade groups of Greys, and maybe that's what that was.
Greys or CIA agents, I don't know.
I don't know. Well, Kathleen asked me to be part of her ERT team, after that, which was is a blessing in my life, and I'm so thrilled about it, But for years I wouldn't talk about it. I didn't address it. Right. The only people I would tell about this were my new field investigators, because I felt like I owed them the caveat. It's like, if you poke at the universe, it might poke back at you, and just be aware. This just sounds crazy, and I hope that you still respect me after telling you this crazy story, but this is what happened to me.
And that doesn't sound crazy. I mean, compared to the stuff that you hear, that sounds very plausible. And especially, because as you're sitting here telling this story, Chris is writing notes and things to me, because he said that was exactly what had happened to him at the ranch, that kind of that cone of silence. In fact, he's been mentioning that all week, talking about that and how, again, the parallels with Camelio and what Guffey was talking about, and the man-made technology, and that does make you wonder, what's going on. And I wonder, because your mom had connections in the aerospace community, for me, my father obviously, was in the military and at an interesting place and things. And so you just wonder what the connections are and all of these things. And I want to ask you, what, when you're talking about commonalities with abduction experiences, can you tell me what some of those are? I mean, are there physical marks left on
Yes.
a body? Talk about that for a minute, if you don't mind.
Sure. Some I won't give you, because some we keep secret, so that we have that, that we can go and compare case to case. But, some of the better known ones is, people will feel like someone's walking on their bed at first. People will, of course, have physical markings, bloody, areas where it looks like, like a sample or a scoop mark was taken. There's always, almost unequivocally, people will have that light phenomenon. And I think that the light that people describe, it's more than just a light, that somehow or another makes your space into their space. I don't know if it's a dimensional thing where they're able to create their little pocket universe where they can, where high strangeness can take place. but that's very, very common, and from case to case, it usually happens. There's so many of these little markers, I mean, of course, seeing the entities. I mean, that's something that I mean, there you go. I mean, people that have, say, sleep paralysis, and sleep paralysis is a thing. I mean, people will have sleep paralysis and they won't be able to move, and sometimes there will be fantastic figures they'll see, maybe.
Right, I just had that last week, actually.
Well, I don't know what to tell you. It could have been sleep paralysis, or maybe you were visited.
Oh, Lordy. Well,
yeah.
Good luck to them.
Yeah, what surprise me. You're a known ufologist, There's just like many little things like that, though, just like, and again, a lot of those I keep to myself. I think that in the ERT we have maybe like 40, 50 different markers that from case to case that, and we'll notice those, we'll delineate those, we'll mark them out, and the more markers you have, if somebody checks every single little box, though, then that kind of makes you wonder,
Right. Well, and I have to wonder, too, because, I look at how Chris and his colleagues were primed before they went to the ranch. So, I mean, they didn't care about any of this stuff, and then they were given Hunt for the Skinwalker. Oh, here, read this before you go, and good luck to you. Have fun.
You shouldn't do that.
Right, which is, in and of itself, just makes you wonder what's going on. And so I look back, and I was watching Close Encounters of the Third Kind a couple weeks ago, and you get Steven Spielberg, who's a great example of priming the American public, and you get the little gray aliens, and then you get, all of these messages about, like the crates in Close Encounters that say Lockheed on the side and different things. And so is there like a mass priming of the American public to maybe have sightings that are relating to little gray beings?
No, have you ever read Ben Rich's autobiography? I mean,
No.
It was really good. It was very, very good. I mean, you can get it on your Kindle. I mean, I read it and I thought it was an amazing book. And of course, Kelly came before him, right? And he saw a UFO over Port Hueneme, and it wasn't one of ours. And apparently, it just freaked him out because he knew it wasn't one of ours. Because usually, people would see the U-2, and of course, the government would blame it on a UFO. They'd say, "Oh, it's not ours; it must have been, them." But I think that the people that work in the black projects are very well aware that there's another hand in there, and I don't know how much they know about them. There's a lot of rumors out there. There are full-on books that people have written, but you got to question. The source.
Yeah, like pretty much most of my library, when I look at my books, I'm like, ooh, either this guy was, I don't know what, smoking a little something, or he was, I don't know what.
Corso. I mean, I like Corso stuff.
You know what? I just...
Weird.
I look back at some of this now and I just think, are you freaking kidding me? I mean, I really do. I think a lot of this is they're either people who are, they are paid to steer the narrative. They're paid to put out disinformation. They're, because at the end of the day, and you mentioned this, we will never know the truth, at least at on the government side of things. And I think that they've found a community that is just ripe for the picking. They can get in there and insert this little thing about, the Holy Mother, piloting a spaceship, or, all of these things, or, a little ugly gray, and then the tall, white, blonde, Nordic beings who are here to save the day on a, spacecraft that Hitler came up with himself. And different things. It's like, I don't know. I mean, come on. You gotta look.
They're all bipedal. How come they're all humanoid?
Yeah, isn't that interesting? I don't know.
See like an octopus style alien, or something that rolls around on a wheel, that evolved that way.
Right, right. And that's what is so trippy to me. It's like, why do we expect that they would look like us? Come on. I mean, that's pretty egocentric. I mean, and then it's like, why are we I don't know. I mean, and why are they flying around if they're this advanced civilization with lights and buzzing sounds and all sorts of things? And it's like, why would they need lights? Come on. They can make it across the galaxy. Why would they, why? Why?
Well, it's, Jacques Vallée, Greg Bishop, listen to Greg, listen to Jacques, think, don't take everything at a surface level. I'm not saying there aren't aliens. I think that there are. I think that we're, that we're sort of a way station, that there's interdimensional stuff. It's probably alien stuff, probably drives the government crazy. They can't control it, but they can certainly use it. And they can use it against you and me and everybody, And you just have to be aware of all that. You have to be, thoughtful and circumspect. And but I certainly don't believe the government's ever going to just close, not intentionally.
I don't think they have a clue. Yeah, I think they might have a clue to certain things, but they don't like what they're seeing. I mean, one thing my mom told me, I took her to see Star Wars, and that got her talking. Right, this was after she stopped talking. She was working in aerospace again. And I took her to see Star Wars the second day it was out, right? We were in Santa Monica. She had a doctor's appointment. She thought she might have cancer, right? Again, she kept getting cancers because she was exposed to stuff. So I went with her. And after, she was fine and the doctor appointment was over. And I said, hey, Mom, there's this cool movie. It's like down the street, just opened. Let's go see it, right? So we went to see Star Wars, and my mom got talking. And I think psychologically she was ready to get, she thought she was going to die. She thought she was sick again. And she was really moved by the film. And she said, son, it's like the lights are coming up. The curtains are, have drawn. People are leaving, and my mom becomes voluble about something that she usually wouldn't talk about. And she said, that film was realer than real. She said, you have no idea that, there's the different races, there's the spaceships like that. She said, as realer than you will ever know. She says, realer than you'll ever know. And at the time, it was back in 1977, right? And at that time, I'd gone back to Christianity. I was teaching Sunday school classes in church and stuff. I was trying to be a good boy and not think about weird stuff like that. And there's my mom talking about, what I wanted her to talk about for years and wouldn't. And now it was inconvenient truth. I didn't want to hear about that. I wanted to hear that, Jesus was doing this and that and the other thing. And I didn't want to hear about aliens. And that's what she said, So, for whatever reason, she opened up. The next time she opened up, I thought that, she talked a little bit. Let's see if she talks a little bit more. I took her to see the movie E.T., and her comment about the film was, you know what, son, it's a cute movie, but I don't think they're all that nice. And, I know. And I have to say, I was just a blubbering fool during E.T. In fact, I watched Close Encounters the other night with Chris, and I'm sitting here crying, and he's just like, what is wrong with you? And I'm blaming it on hormones right now. That's what's wrong with me.
No, it's just stuff. And it's emotional to you because in your heart that there's a truth, behind this stuff, which direction that truth goes.
Right.
I don't know,
right.
But it's going to affect you emotionally. But that was my mom's comment about E.T. I don't think it was a cute movie, son, but I don't think they're all that nice.
Well, I mean, it is interesting because I think that we've certainly been around. The human race has been around a long, long time, and we haven't fallen prey or victim to ET yet. And so I think the threat scenario, I mean, what we should be concerned about is us. We are the threat. And so I can tell you, and I've mentioned this on a couple other shows, I don't want people like Louis Elizondo and Tom DeLonge having a conversation with ETs or having that first exchange. I mean, come on. No. I think that would not be in ET's best interest. I'm just saying, hey.
To be paranoid.
I know.
be paranoid.
It's like,
That is their
send
job.
somebody good. Send somebody like, I mean, I'll communicate with them. I'll
Dolly
learn their
Long,
language. I mean, but, help me, Rhonda.
Send Erica.
I know. I mean, seriously,
Dolly
come on.
Long. Send me. I'll go. I'm good at ambassadorial stuff.
See, I can tell.
Be a sweetheart to them,
Right.
But if they want to destroy us, I'll figure out some way to, put an atom bomb in their space.
I know. Well, I mean, hey, I think we've seen a few movies like that, Independence Day and
I don't think that's
different
gonna
things. And then you wonder, and this is, I need to have you back on the show because I've been very intrigued as of late as to like the intelligence community and their connection in Hollywood to get propaganda out, to kind of promote different ideologies. And then again, you might have the fact that you've got these prominent directors who are priming the public for things and I don't necessarily feel they're getting humans ready for disclosure. I think that's a load of nonsense. I think it's more so they can hide covert projects. And then we've also seen how the UFO community is used with, a foreign intelligence and things, how they use it as a bait and different things. And so, yeah. So it's interesting, but I don't know. I love it. And of course we've gone over because I just could talk to you all night as always, but it's been so enjoyable, Earl. And I know that we're going to become great friends and we will have more conversations on and off the show. And I appreciate you absolutely. Your lovely music. And I just wish you the best and be safe. I know you will be because you wear a mask. Yes, sir. One more normal person. Yeah, I love it.
If you go into outer space, wear a spacesuit, wear a space helmet. You won't be able to breathe. You'll die if you don't, If you go out in a COVID, blemished world that we live in right now, for God's sake, just wear a silly mask. It's nothing. It's not going to hurt you. It might save your life.
Yeah, I know. It's the little things you do that I guess are clearly big issues, but hey, whatever. And I will encourage all of you to go out and look at some of the Utah news about masks and some of the rallies that have been taking place here, because you're going to find some good comedy bits. Yay, Utah. Love it. Yeah. But anyway, have a wonderful night, Earl. Thank you so much. And go give the kiddies a big hug for me. And I want to thank everybody out there for always asking such great questions in the chat room and for getting the word out. I need all of your help. I am doing a great deal of work, and I couldn't do it without Mario and people like Scott and people who are supporting the show and then also sharing the show. I need your help. If you can take the show and share it on your social media platforms, that would be wonderful. I love doing what I'm doing, and I'm on to something that is really important, and I will keep digging, and I will do that for all of us because this is in our best interest, and we deserve the truth, and we deserve to not be used as human guinea pigs, and we deserve to be empowered. And so I am Erica Lukes. This is UFO Classified. The next couple weeks are going to be good. In 2 weeks from tonight, I'm going to have a show on Skinwalker Ranch. There are going to be more bombshells coming out, and so just you wait. It never gets old. So you guys take care. Have a wonderful night, and we will catch you next week.
So my skeptical mind, and that's just who I am. My skeptical mind goes to, well, yeah, of course, you've got this guy over here that's logical and reasonable, and you got this guy over here that's wearing a tinfoil hat. Of course, the tinfoil hat guy's gonna see a lot of stuff, right? He's like imagining it, or he's watched one too many sci-fi movies.
But it's used to help us frame hypotheses for UFO propulsion, power, stealth, weaponry.
Everything that we experience is very positive.
Sometimes the field of ufology has a short memory span.
We didn't know anything about the $22 million back then. We just kind of thought, well, this is, and I think that was the reason why they were looking for military-type people, because in the military, you work with whatever you got, no matter what the situation is, and you just kind of adapt and overcome.
What are you going to do with all this? You can't even take care of your own files and get them put into the current system, but yet you want to go collect other people's things. So what are you going to do with it? Who are you giving all this to?
It just really struck me about how the common thread seemed to be deception, but deception of a human nature. So that's what I started thinking, who would these folks be? I mean, then I started thinking about the intelligence agencies, what role they could play, and what would be their motivations for getting involved in ufology.
I'm not saying that because the gimbal is not a rotating flying saucer, that means that all the UFOs are false. Not at all. All I'm doing is I'm looking at this one case, these individual cases, and seeing if there's an explanation for those. So try to, if I could ask people out there listening, don't think that I'm trying to attack your entire beliefs about these things.
I'm Joe Biden, candidate for president, and I approve this message. Our current president has failed in his most basic duty to the nation. He's failed to protect us. He's failed to protect America. And my fellow Americans, that is unforgivable. As president, I'll make you a promise. I'll protect America. I will defend us from every attack, seen and unseen, without exception, every time.
Paid for by Biden for president.
When deciding how and when to safely return to the workplace, you need to be informed. That's why IBM Watson helps you prioritize employee safety with Watson Works, a set of AI-infused capabilities. Let's put smart to work. Visit IBM.com/WatsonWorks to learn more.